Welcome to GIMP Basics to work along to. Today we will create a ball or balloon, just a sphere-shaped object. Let's start by creating a new file. So in GIMP you go to File, New. I will work with 1600 times 1600 pixels. So now we need a new layer for the base color of our sphere. So we will create a new layer by clicking on this white paper with a plus sign. You can give the layer a name. I often don't do it because there's also an icon where you can see what's on the layer, and I tend to work with that. But if we would like to name it, we would name it base color and make sure the layer is one with transparency. So basically it's like a layer of a transparent film, and we can place color on top of that, and the white background will still come through. Now let's take the ellipse select tool. It looks like this, and you can just left click and pull up a circle. Oftentimes it's important to have a circle it's like the height and the width are identical. So while you're doing that, you can just press Shift and you get a perfect circle. So let's do that. You can also move it a little bit, and when you left click inside of the selection again, then you make the actual selection. At this point, we need to choose the color of the sphere we would like to create. So if we go to the color picker over here, we can just find a color we like. I will go with this purple tone, but basically you can choose any color you would like. Press OK. And what we will do right now is just fill this whole selection, and we will do that with the bucket tool. Just click it and left click inside the sphere selection, circle selection. You can see that this base color is on the base color layer, the one we just created. It's a really good idea to place the different elements of your picture on different layers so you can edit them separately later on if needed. The next thing we will do is create some shading. We will add a lighter part right here, assuming the light source will come somewhere from here, front, like a bit close to the camera. This is just the simplest possibility to show the shading, so we will just pick that. And the first thing we will do is we will create a new layer again. So again, click on this white sheet of paper with a plus sign. We could call it shading 1. Again, it's important that it's set to transparency. And make sure you have this new layer selected, because if you're here, then you will just continue working on this layer. So just make sure this one is selected. Now we will need a matching color for the light part of the sphere. We will go to the color picker again and choose a lighter shade. I usually say don't move too much into this direction to the left, because here the color will lose saturation. Move up where the lighter colors are, and maybe a tiny bit to the left. You will just get the best result, but of course it depends a lot on the shade you've chosen. But the good thing with having everything on different layers is that you can still tweak the tone separately later on. So don't stress too much over finding the correct tone right here and now. You can still adjust a little bit later on. I've actually just found that earlier. Well, it might not be perfect, but it's one I picked. As you can see, a little bit to the left and some up. So up and pick this lighter shade. Now we still have the bucket tool. We will need the paintbrush tool, so choose that one. And we are on the correct layer. And what we will do now is we will need the point where the light hits our sphere, and I think this will be about here in my case. Let's just make a little dot like that. Of course that's not enough. Here you have the brush settings, and I will make the brush bigger like that. And now make sure you don't get close to the edge of your sphere. Like, keep the color around this point I just hit, like that. And fill about 2/3 of the sphere. It doesn't matter if it's not smooth or anything. It's just important that you leave some of the base color all the way around, and on the opposite side of the sphere, like the light's coming from here and hits here, this point we don't have any of this lighter color. So done with that, we will go to this tool, which is the smudge tool. I use it a lot, like all the time, much more than the paintbrush actually, and I'm sure people work in different ways, but I really like this one. So let's take the smudge tool and maybe make this brush a bit bigger, and in the settings for the smudge tool, if you go down a little bit, you have one that's called rate and flow. Here it's important that you set flow to 0, because if that's not 0, then it will actually add your foreground color, the one you have chosen here, while you smudge on your picture. And we would like, we don't want that at this point. We just want to tweak the shape of this color we've already applied. The rate, this means the higher this is, the more you actually smudge it out. Like if this is 100%, then you would just move the color around forever. It wouldn't disappear. And if it's very low, then you would just move it out a tiny little bit, and then nothing more would happen. I can actually show you. If we go all the way down and just pull here, you see the color moves a tiny little bit. And if we set it to 100%, it will go on forever. Of course, only inside this circle selection, because that's what the selection does. We only work inside the selection. But let's just go back and let's set the rate to about 70, I think. And now let's fix the shape of this color we've placed. To create a gradient, it has to, the color has to disappear slowly into this direction. Like here, I will smudge it more, and with a bigger brush it will be a softer gradient if you use a bigger brush. And for the edges of this lighter part, just follow along the shape of your sphere. And again, make sure you don't cover the outer part, but leave some of this base color we have, like the dark shade, around this ball. This can actually take some time, especially if you're if you don't have that much practice yet. But that's just the way it is. My computer's a bit laggy because it's a really old Mac, and when I'm also recording, then it's almost a bit too much for it. Right? This should be fine. Now one more thing. It's hard to get that perfect, and it doesn't have to be usually. But we can smooth it out a little bit by going up to filters blur and Gaussian blur. Make sure you take a preview and you see the X and Y size. You can't see much right now, but let's just move it all up and you can see it will blur out this lighter part and smooth it out quite a bit. You pretty much have to try it out how much you would like it. I think I will go with like that, not too much. Click OK and you see it, it looks really smooth and nice. Are we done? No, of course not. Let's go to the layers again and create another one. Let's call it shading 2. And again, transparency. Okay. Now we need another color, one that is even lighter. Again, just try it out. For me, it's that one. In most cases, it depends on how dark you've started out, but in most cases you will pretty much be at the top now. But don't go too much to the left because it will lose saturation unless you have like a very cold blue color or black or gray. But for me it's about here. And make sure you're on this new layer, shading 2. Again, we will take the paintbrush tool, make the brush smaller because it's still big from smudging this first color. And again, we will find the spot where the light hits our sphere. And if you remember, it was about here. Now we are at the point where we won't add much color. This really is the lightest part. So this should be enough. Just it doesn't have to look good, it just needs some color. And we will go for the smudge tool again. Make the brush a bit bigger and just again shape it so it is round and follows the shape of our ball. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect at all. Just do it like this. And again, we can use the Gaussian blur filters. Blur, Gaussian blur. Take the preview to see what's happening and up with the size X and Y to see what's happening. You can go up quite a lot. Like that. Okay. And now looking at it, I actually think I didn't paint enough of this lightest shade. So what I will do is I will duplicate this layer. You can do that by clicking on this icon with the two blue squares. And you see, it's added another one on top. And now if you choose the move tool, it looks like 4 arrows. I can move this copy a little bit into this direction to just tweak the placement of this shading. I think it will go up a bit and like that, and I think I will blur it again, only the copy, not the first one. Just to spread it more evenly. Let's see if I move it a bit more. Yeah, you really need to tweak and into it until you like it. Yeah, I think this should be fine. Right, so I could merge these two by right-clicking merge down, which will merge the layer you've selected with the one right underneath it, so we don't have too many layers. Now let's make one more. Actually, I think this extra layer is not really needed. Oh, I forgot to name it. Well, anyway, this is like some highlights, and not every sphere actually needs highlights. It's just if it's like a balloon that's actually shiny on the surface, but not like glossy shiny. But yeah, but if the surface is matte, like it's stone or wood, then you don't really need highlights. I will take I will just assume it's something that's like a balloon or so. So I will take a very, very light tone that's not completely white, but almost. Like that. I'm on the new layer, and I will take the brush again. Far too big, of course. I will have to go move the size down to, yeah, maybe that. And again, I will find that point where the light hits my sphere. I actually think the color is too dark and dull. Let's go with pure white. Might actually be better in this case. And this point might actually be enough to try to make it a little bit bigger. Sometimes 2 or 3 are fine too, because usually, of course this doesn't look real as it is, but usually these are light sources you can see on the surface. So this might be lamps that are in the environment that actually create this effect. I will go for 3 small dots in different sizes, right, like this. This should be fine. Now we have the lighter shades and the highlights, and we need the darker parts, like the actual shading around here. Again, we will start by making a new layer. Call it darkest part. And we still have our selection. And what we will do now is, since it's a sphere, actually the very outmost edge won't be the darkest part, so we will shrink this selection, move this selection a tiny bit in, and we can do that by choosing select, shrink, and yeah, let's just go for 10 pixels. But if you've chosen a much bigger format, like I went for 1600 times 1600 pixels, if yours is much bigger, then you will also have to enter a bigger number here. You can just try it out. I will go for 10 pixels, which looks about right. Now we've selected a circle inside of this sphere. So if we would paint here, actually let's just I'll just show you. If we would paint here, it would only paint inside this selection. Of course, that's exactly what the selection is for. But what we would do now is, we would like to make the selection smaller. We don't want to apply any color here in the center, but only in a small part around here. So if you go to the ellipse select tool, this tool has extra options, and if you look here, actually all the selection tools have it. Usually this is standard, where it just create a new selection. So if I would select something here, this selection would disappear and I would get a new one here. This one would add to the selection. So if I would select here, then I would like have a snowman shaped double circle shape selected as one. Then we have subtract, like if I would select something here, then I would have like a hole in my selection. And we also have the difference. So if I would select here, I would have like an almond shape here where they intersected. But what I would like to do now is actually, I would like to subtract. I would like to remove a part from my selection. And what I would like to remove is a circle around this lightest part of my sphere. I would like to create a border that is thinnest up here and thickest down here. So let's try to do that. Again, if you press Shift, it will lock the proportions. Let's try to move it to the right spot. Yeah, I think that looks about nice. Left click again to make the actual selection. Now you see it removes this inner circle from my previous selection, so the selection is now this border right here. Now we already have this new layer, and now we will need a darker shape here. So we will need a new color and a really dark one. Well, really dark. You see my shading here, it's just like a gradient. This will be my dark tone. I actually think I can go a little bit darker, like that. Like the part that isn't hit by light, what color should it be? As I mentioned, you can still tweak that later on because we have these different layers. But let's go for this one for now. Right, so basically what we have to do now is just fill this whole border with the dark color. We can do that with the paint bucket tool, but you could basically also just take a brush if you like, but let's just take the paint bucket for now, like that. And if you choose select and none, you can see we have this border now. Of course that doesn't look right. We will need to smooth it out so it actually looks like shading. So we will again go for the ellipse select tool, and we will make a new selection. Now we have to remember we're still in the subtract mode for the selection. You can see that because we have this little minus sign. We have to go all up here and choose to replace the current selection again. That's like the standard mode. Now we will create a new selection, a circle that includes the inner part of this dark shape, but not the outer edge. So again, press Shift to lock the proportions. Let's see if I can. That was a bit too big. Go in a bit. Like that. You can see it. The selection includes the inner part but not the outer edge. So I can just left click again to make the selection. And now we're still only working for this darkest part. We will use again the blur filter right here. Filters, blur, Gaussian blur. Again, take the preview and increase size X and size Y to see what happens. Nice, isn't it? Just go somewhere up to make a really smooth gradient and transition. That should be fine. Okay. And now you can deselect by select and none. And you see we have this nice shading all around. We're not done though, because we still have this really hard edge all around the sphere. And that's a bit too much, but now we've removed the selection, and now we can actually run the blur filter again on top of the whole shape to just blur out this part a tiny little bit. So filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And now we only need a small number for size X and Y. Let's see. That's not quite enough. My computer is so slow. No, I actually think it is this enough? I actually think it is. Take some more just to compare. I think that will be too much. Well, of course it's a matter of taste, but personally I really like the effect that this shade is still defined a tiny little bit. Like, yeah, I think that's fine. Maybe back a tiny bit. Oh, it's so slow. It's so slow. Right, I think 7. 7 is fine. Right. Now we're pretty much done. Pretty much. I think, if it was me, I would actually experiment a bit with adding some extra shading right here. But you could use that. I mean, it looks nice. I'm not sure if it would be too much to add some extra shading, but let's just see what it looks like. So add an extra layer, and we will need a good selection again. Round 1. And it will have to cover like the opposite edge of the lightest part. It doesn't have to include like this edge. This should keep its shape and color. I think we'll move it in a tiny bit, like that. Let's just make that selection. And I will subtract again, like remove this part, so I get like a very, very thin moon shape. Even smaller, I think. It's really just a tiny bit, like that. Yeah. Something like that. And now I need a really, really dark shade, like almost black. Almost black. Like that. Yeah. And just fill it on a new layer so we don't mess up what we've already done. I just fill this shape and deselect. Yeah, maybe. I think it's a bit too close right here. I think I will scale it a bit, the scale tool, because I don't like the shape right here. I think I will have to press it up a bit to like that. That was not much of a difference. Oh, it's just because my computer's so slow again. Okay, great. That doesn't look bad. Now, of course, again, I would like to blur this. So let's just see what the Gaussian blur can do for this shading. Yeah, I actually think it's really good. I do think it's good. So let's just keep that. I will take the movement tool and just see if I can tweak the placement a tiny bit. Move it to the right a little bit and move it up a little bit. Right. Now I actually think this could be even darker, but I guess it's fine. Let's just see if we make the background like this darkest shape I've just placed. I wanted to go with black, but let's just see if we go to the background here, like it's the lowest layer. Yeah, it's nice. Maybe a tiny bit too dark, but it's not a problem. What we can do now, just to make the background a little bit more interesting, is we can add a tiny bit of light here at the top. So if you have the background layer selected and add a new layer, like this sheet of paper of the plus sign, we call it light. Yeah, something like that. It will place it just over the background. So what we paint on this layer will be behind the whole sphere and everything, but before the background, on top of the background. Of course, you can always move around the layers if you want them in different place, but yeah, take this extra layer and we will just add a tiny bit of a light effect up here. We will take a lighter shade. We can actually take the base color. I think the other ones will be too light. Take a brush, make it pretty big, and you see, like, the spheres hit by light around here, so the light source has to be like about here. And just make it a bit more interesting, make the brush much smaller and just add a few dots so it's not so boring. Also a few here, because again, what I will do when I'm done with that, right, I will take another, let's take a tiny bit lighter color, tiny bit, not too much, just make some extra dots that are a tiny bit lighter. Maybe just, it doesn't matter too much because we will blur that out completely. It's just create some interesting pattern, and we will take filter and blur, just like many times before, Gaussian blur, and increase the blur size, and look what happens. It has to be quite high or it will look really odd. Actually even higher, I think, because it's really just like some background noise. Like that. Should be fine. I actually think I will have a lighter less saturated color, like we go almost into the gray direction and very light. I'm on top of that, so we'll take another light layer. And at this point, that's really not like a basic technique. This is just experimenting with colors and just very simple effects that sometimes just make a huge difference. That just a tiny bit. Really, it shouldn't be too much at this point. Some down here, maybe. I think that's almost enough. So let's just pop on the Gaussian blur again and see if this is what we want to do. Yeah, I think that's fine. And at the bottom here, I will make some lighter color. New layer. This is not light, this is like ground. And I will go not completely black, but I think I'll take like a bluish tone and take something that's almost black, like almost. Oh, cancel. There was the blur again. I don't need that right now. And the brush, and take a really big brush. We are on the ground layer, and I'll just add a tiny bit of color around the lowest part of my picture. Especially in this side, because light comes from up here, so darkest part here. That's not really logical, but it should look nice. Right, and like a in the background, like this lightest color, it might be too dark. The background here I filled with my base color, so I will just try to make it a tiny little bit lighter. If you go on the colors, you have different tools. I will try to take the hue saturation tool. You can also try brightness, contrast, but I pretty much like this one. And you have different modes here, different things you can adjust. I will try to go up for the lightness a tiny bit, just a tiny bit. Oh, my computer's so slow, it's horrible. And you see, the whole background lightens up a tiny bit, and this blue bottom will get a bit more. It stands out a tiny bit more. And again, this is just experimenting, and you can use so much time on that. You can spend hours trying to tweak colors and stuff. But I think I will just leave it here. We have a slightly lighter shade now, so let's just say, right, this has to do. This was like a really quick thing to do, but I think it looks really nice, and especially if you're new to GIMP, you can quickly have this really good effect. I hope you like this tutorial. Please let me know in the comments what you think. If if you could follow along or if you had any troubles. And also please let me know if you would like me to show you some different things. Yeah, I'll be happy to create more tutorials, so let me know what you would like to learn in GIMP. Also, if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel and leave a like on the video. Thank you so much. Goodbye.